something to think about.
Shalom and greetings. We welcome you to this week's Sabbath message. This week's Sabbath message is entitled, Who are our leaders? Who are our leaders and where are they leading us? Where are they leading us? Who are our leaders and where are they leading us? Let us really consider, truly think about who do we call? Who do we call? Let us consider and truly think about who do we call our leaders? And seriously examine, where are they leading us? Who do we call leaders and where are they leading us? Now, this is a rhetorical question, but personal to each of us. It is probable that each of us has different answers. As always, let us move from just knowing to understanding. And we will start with first understanding what the word leader means. So we're going to grow and move from just knowing to truly understanding what the word leader means. The Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the word leader as a person who leads, such as a guide. Guide. It goes on to say conductor, a person who directs a military force or unit, leaders of the army. Get this, a person who has commanding authority or influence. So I want us to focus on these two here, that the word leader is saying, is by definition from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is telling us that the word leader means a guide. But it also means a person who has commanding authority or influence. Now, the Merriam-Webster's definition of leader really does not clearly define what is a leader, but gave us characteristics. The first characteristic similar to leader was guide, a guide. So, let us understand what the word guide means. The Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the word guide as one that directs or leads another's way. So now we're kind of starting to get some definition here, not just a characteristic, but a guide is one that leads or directs another's way. A person, it goes on to say, who directs another's conduct or course of life. Now, using the word guide as a similar characteristic for leader, the first and foremost responsibility of a leader is to lead or direct others' ways. To lead or direct others' conduct and or course of life. So this insinuates that the guide, the leader, is competent, equipped, and committed to do so on behalf of others. Key in on that last part. And committed to do so on behalf of others. Now, many of us may have experienced a guide leading a group of people. The guide is believed to be able to ensure the safety of those they lead, as well as provide those they lead with understanding of their journey and making sure that the conduct is appropriate during the journey. Now, interestingly, we covered guide, the characteristic guide that was a characteristic of leader. But interestingly, the other Merriam-Webster's dictionary characteristic given of a similarity to leader was a person who has commanding authority or influence. Unlike a guide, a person who has commanding authority or influence, there is nothing that indicates the person will use their authority or influence on behalf of benefiting others. Let me say this again. A person who has commanding authority or influence, which is another characteristic of leader, according to the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, there is nothing that indicates the person will use their authority or influence on behalf of benefiting others. A person can have commanding authority or influence and choose not to lead on behalf of benefiting others, but use it for personal gain. Get this, get this. We're living in these times. So, this poses an important question. Are they, those that have commanding authority or influence, are they still considered a leader? This is another example of the importance and significance of growing from just knowing to understanding Scripture. The transliterated word leader is only used in the Old Testament / covenant. So that transliterated word leader that you see in the King James Scripture, it's only used in the Old Testament. It's never even used in the New Testament. The plural word of leader, leaders, is used only once in the New Testament / covenant. In the original Hebrew language, the transliterated words captain, prince, noble, ruler, and governor. So all of these words that you may see in your King James Bible, in your King James Scripture, are all the same word and have the same meaning as leader. One of the definitions given in the Jacinius Hebrew Chaldee lexicon for the transliterated word leader, which applies to all those other words that we just used, is noble, honorable. So the Jacinius Hebrew Chaldee lexicon has as a definition for the word leader and all of the other words that we just stated that are the same. The definition is noble, honorable. Now, the first time the word leader or leader is used in the Scripture is as the transliterated word captain. So again, remember we said all of those words are the same. Captain, prince, noble, ruler, governor, leader, they're all the same. So the first time the word is used in the Scripture is as the transliterated word captain. And it's in 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 16. Now, in the very first usage of a leader in Scripture, so the very first time a leader, a captain, is used in Scripture, it validates the captain was noble and honorable because Yahweh placed the captain, the leader, over his people. Unlike the secular definition of leader, in the Scripture, it is clear that a leader is honorable, not leading only for personal gain. Understanding the secular definition of leader identifies that a leader may or may not choose to lead on behalf of benefiting others. This makes it even more important and significant what leaders we choose. It's important and significant what leaders we choose. So, who are our leaders? Personal. A rhetorical but personal question. Who are our leaders? Who are those that are leading, directing our ways, our conduct and or course of life for our benefit, for our betterment? Sadly, there are those that some call leaders who have the ability, to command authority and influence, but are not guiding, directing the conduct and or course of lives for the benefit or betterment of others. Instead, they are using and confusing people under the facade of being a leader, a guide, decimating anyone and anything hindering their personal agenda. Unfortunately, there are others that some call leaders that are guiding, directing the conduct and or course of lives, but in an unmoral, unethical, and debilitating manner. If the aforementioned can be called leaders and they are being followed, where are they leading those following them? We see the above mentioned leaders bullying and blaming others that do not agree with their personal agenda, using those that consider themselves as leaders. So using those that consider them as leaders to try and defend that which is not defendable, and confusing them such that they act irrational. There are those that call themselves leaders that are guiding, directing the conduct and or course of lives by compromising morality to win support, and that are unscrupulous in their behavior. These actions that they call themselves leaders are portraying flow down to their followers in the form of self-centeredness, without empathy, and usury of all types. Now, we've looked at the secular meanings of what is a leader, but let us understand that every single one of us has a choice in who we consider to be called and we follow as a leader. Everyone has a choice in who they consider to be called and who they follow as a leader. Now, even though the Worldwide Secular Propaganda Campaign, the WWSPC, gives the appearance of establishing who should be our leaders, the Worldwide Secular Propaganda Campaign, the WWSPC, does this by promoting those that have gained popularity, influence, and or authority. We saw this in one of the Merriam-Webster's dictionary definitions of the word leader. Again, it is of paramount importance that we all understand that who we choose as leaders is actually a personal decision. Each and every one of us should be determining who we choose and follow as leaders. The indoctrination of the WWSPC, the Worldwide Secular Propaganda Campaign, has conditioned most to accept the leaders they have established and espouse support. We all have accountability. We all have accountability. We all have accountability for our conduct and or course of life. And this is impacted by who we choose and follow as leaders. If our conduct and our course of life is inappropriate, this adds up to those we selected as leaders not leading, directing our ways, our conduct, and our course of life for our benefit, for our betterment. Not leading on behalf of benefiting others. And their leadership actually having an adverse impact on those of us following them. It is a direct correlation of our poor choice of choosing leaders. So, what does the scripture have to say about leaders? And where Elohim's leaders lead his followers? What does the scripture have to say about leaders? And where Elohim's leaders lead his followers? Let us allow scripture to validate and corroborate scripture as we always do. As we stated earlier, the first time Yahweh Elohim mentions a leader is in 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 16. So let us turn there. And we're going to read in 1 Samuel chapter 9, and we're going to read verses 15 and 16 there. 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 15 and 16. Okay, it reads, "Now the Lord had told Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came, saying," 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 16, "Tomorrow, about this time, I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain." Remember that word captain, same as leader. "Thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry is come unto me." Now, in the passage of 1 Samuel chapter 9, verses 15, actually in this passage in 1 Samuel chapter 9, this is Yahweh Elohim appointing a leader at the request, though, we need to understand this, at the request of the children of Israel to rule over them. So this is going to qualify and quantify a little bit the leader that Yahweh selected to be put over the children of Israel. Okay? So let us get the full picture of what Yahweh Elohim does in appointing the requested leader over the children of Israel. In order to do this, we have to go back to 1 Samuel chapter 8. So in 1 Samuel chapter 8, the children of Israel rejected Yahweh Elohim as their leader. Let me say this again. In 1 Samuel chapter 8, the children of Israel rejected Yahweh Elohim as their leader, their guide, and requested to have a king to rule over them. This is significant because anytime we go against what scripture has shared with us and someone else, be in a position of some authority or have some kind of title that the rest of the world considers important, and we follow that, like, well, we can't go specifically with what the Most High said. We're going to go with them. This is the same thing that the children of Israel did in 1 Samuel chapter 8. We reject Yahweh Elohim as our leader, as our guide, and request to have a king rule over us. So let us read 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 1 through 5. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1 reads, "And it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 2. "Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah. And they were judges in Beersheba." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 3. "And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, after money, and took bribes and perverted judgment." So now get this now. Start to key in. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 4. "Then all the leaders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel in Ramah." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 5. "And said," this is all the leaders, "and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways." These things were all true. But get this. "Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." So they came to Samuel with this request. That they didn't say, give us a righteous judge from the Most High, get rid of your sons, because that was a true statement. But no, they didn't want to go that route. They said, make us a king to judge us like all the other nations. They were influenced. I want us to key in on this. Are we influenced? They were influenced by the world, by the secular world. Like everybody else has a king but us. Yahweh Elohim instructs Samuel to hearken to their requests, but first warn them of what they are asking for. Now, this is important because Yahweh Elohim, he hears this. Samuel goes and tells him. We're going to pick up in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 7. We're going to skip over 6. Yahweh Elohim then instructs Samuel to hearken to their requests, but first warn them of what they're asking for. So this kind of quantifies and qualifies the leader, the captain that Yahweh Elohim put over the children of Israel. So let us pick up in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 7. "And the Lord Yahweh said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 8. "According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 9. "Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them." Again, he's still not trying to let them walk off the cliff. He says, hearken, but just protest like, are you sure you want to walk off this cliff? But not only protested them solemnly, he says, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 10. "And Samuel told all the words of the Lord Yahweh unto the people that asked of him a king." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 11. "And he, Samuel, said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 12. "And he," this king you're asking for, "will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over fifties, and will set them to ear his corn and to reap his harvest and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots." 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 13. And he, this king that you're requesting, will take your daughters to be confectionaries and to be cooks and to be bakers. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 14. And he, this king that you're requesting, will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 15. And he, this king you're requesting, will take the 10th of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 16. And he, this king you're requesting, will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses and put them to his work. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 17. He, this king you're requesting, will take the 10th of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 18. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen, you. And the Lord will not hear you in that day. Key into this part right here. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you. So again, it's important that we truly choose wisely when we're selecting leaders to rule over us. Because the Lord goes on to say, and the Lord Yahweh will not hear you in that day, because that's the king, that's the leader that you chose. Even with this warning given from Yahweh Elohim to Samuel to share with the children of Israel, the children of Israel still demanded to have a king rule over them, as are like unto the other nations. So Yahweh Elohim instructed Samuel to appoint them a king. So understand, this is the king, this is this captain that he appoints over them. So let us read 1 Samuel chapter 8, and we're going to pick back up at verse 19, and we'll read through 22. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 19. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, nay, no, to all that stuff you said, but we will have a king over us. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 20. That we also may be like all the nations. That we also may be like all the nations, that we fit in. And that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 21. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord Yahweh. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 22. And the Lord Yahweh said to Samuel, hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. Now understand that Yahweh Elohim appointed the requested leader over the children of Israel, like unto or as the other nations would appoint a leader. So again, I just want to be real clear that the first time that word captain or leader is used in scripture, it was someone that was honorable, that was noble, but not to the most high standards, but it was an honorable or noble person, as unlike to the other nations would appoint a leader. Okay. But again, it's in the same vein, unlike the secular definition where you have this polar, one that is definitely for leading and guiding on behalf of others, and the other may or may not. But I just want to qualify that. So let's pick back up in 1 Samuel chapter 9, and we're going to start in verse 2. And it reads, and he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man, and a goodly. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward, he was higher than any of the people. Now, this scriptural example is informative. All scripture is profitable. This scriptural example is informative, providing us understanding as to how the first leader of Israel came to be. Do not be deceived by the words goodly and goodlier. These words used in this passage have nothing to do with being good. They are describing the appearance of Saul. It is of paramount importance that we do not miss and understand what Yahweh Elohim does to leaders who are not obedient to his will and his word. So again, that goodly and goodlier has nothing to do with being good. It's based on Saul's appearance. If you remember here in 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 2, it says, from his shoulders, that among the children of Israel, a goodlier person, there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward, he was higher than any of the people. This is validating. This is all about Saul's appearance. But again, I want to reiterate this. It is of paramount importance that we do not miss and understand what Yahweh Elohim does to leaders. What Yahweh Elohim does to leaders who are not obedient to his will and his word. So let us now read and go to 1 Samuel chapter 13. And we're going to start in verse 8 and read through verse 14. And we're going to see Saul not being obedient to Yahweh Elohim's commandments. So in 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 8 is where we're going to start. It reads, and he, speaking of Saul, tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 9. And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me, and peace offerings. And he, Saul, offered the burnt offering. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 10. And it came to pass that as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him that he might salute him. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 11. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered themselves together at Michmash. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 12. Therefore said I, the Philistines will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication unto the Lord Yahweh. I forced myself, therefore, and offered a burnt offering. I mean, boy, we could come up with some rationalizations when we have to. We could come up with some rationalizations, but get this in 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 13. And Samuel said to Saul, thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord Yahweh thy God Elohim, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. So again, understand that the scripture is really black and white. Samuel tells Saul, like, okay, I heard all of that rationalization, but you did foolishly, and you did not keep the commandment of the Most High. And had you done that, the Lord would have established your kingdom upon Israel forever. Let's continue on. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 14. But now, because you didn't hearken unto the Most High's commandment. You didn't keep the Most High's commandment, but now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord Yahweh had sought him a man after his own heart. And the Lord Yahweh hath commanded him to be captain, leader over his people. Because, and the reason why, thou hast not kept that which the Lord Yahweh commanded thee. Wow, it's a lot in here. It's a lot in here. This passage of scripture shares Saul as a leader did not obey and keep the commandments of Yahweh Elohim. Just bottom line, you didn't obey and keep the commandments of Yahweh Elohim. And scripture shares how Yahweh Elohim views disobedience. He shares it right here, that there are consequences for such actions. It even goes into the detail of whom Yahweh Elohim seeks to be his leaders, his captains. We saw in 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 14, it says that that Yahweh Elohim is searching for leaders that are after his own heart. That's what he's looking for. So let us now go to 1 Samuel chapter 15. And we're going to read verses 1 through 3 and 7 through 9. So here in 1 Samuel chapter 13, we saw where Saul disobeyed the Most High. He disobeyed him and there was consequences. So now we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 15, and this is another example of Saul's disobedience. 1 Samuel chapter 15, we're going to go there to verse 1 is where we're going to start. It reads, Samuel also said unto Saul. So now this is after he already blew it initially in 1 Samuel 13. Now we're fast forwarding in 1 Samuel 15. So Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. So he still anointed him to be king even after he was disobedient. But we know his kingdom, his rulership over the children of Israel would not be forever. But he still said, okay, I'm going to still anoint you king over Israel. So Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore, hearken, listen, do thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord Yahweh. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 2. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 3. Now go. He's talking to Saul. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. Okay, so in case you didn't get that, he says, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. So 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 1 through 3, the instructions shared here are very lucid. They're very clear, without any ambiguity as to what Yahweh Elohim expected of Saul. So Saul was given clear instructions from Yahweh Elohim. So let us continue in 1 Samuel 15, and we're going to skip down to verses 7 through 9. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 7 reads, and Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 8. And he, Saul, took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But get that first part. Saul took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 9. But Saul and the people spared Agag. And in addition to sparing Agag, the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fatlings and of the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. But everything that was vile and refuse, that they destroyed utterly. This is yet another example of Saul not adhering to the word of Yahweh Elohim. As we just stated, there is no exception for Yahweh Elohim's leaders for being disobedient. There will be consequences for these actions. Unlike in this secular world, when the leaders are disobedient, when they do something wrong, it's like, well, let's give them a pass. Well, they didn't really mean it, and they won't do it again. Let us learn from Scripture. There is no exception for leaders. Scripture shows there is no exception for Yahweh Elohim's leader for being disobedient. There will be consequences for their actions. So let us continue with 1 Samuel, and we're going to go and read 15 verses 10 through 11. 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 10 reads, Then came the word of the Lord Yahweh unto Samuel, saying, 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 11, It repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me and hath not performed my commandments. This is what Yahweh is telling Samuel. He is turned back from following me. He's not following my commandments and have not performed my commandments. But get this. And it grieved Samuel. It grieved him. And he cried unto the Lord Yahweh all night. The scripture is very clear. It repenteth Yahweh Elohim when a leader he appoints does not follow his commandments. It repenteth him. So that's why we have to hold leaders. We should hold leaders. And leaders should hold themselves to the standard of keeping his commandments. Also note, which is just as significantly important. Notice how a true believer, a true follower, a true disciple of Yahweh Elohim responds to a leader that is turned from following after Yahweh Elohim. It grieved Samuel. It grieved him. And he cried unto Yahweh all night. So let us continue in 1 Samuel 15 and skip down to verses 13, and we're going to read through 28. 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 13 reads, And Samuel said to Saul, and Saul said unto him, and Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said unto him, Blessed be thou of the Lord Yahweh. Get what he says here. This was Saul tells Samuel. I have performed the commandment of the Lord Yahweh. That's his lead in. 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 14. And Samuel said, What meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in mine ears and the lowing of the oxen which I hear? So Samuel asked him a simple question. If you perform the commandment of Yahweh, that means you would have utterly destroyed all the sheep and all the oxen. But I hear bleating of sheep and lowing of oxen. 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 15. And Saul said, get this what he says. There's no difference in the time in what has happened and transpired over the years. Saul said, they, not me, they have brought them from the Amalekites. He doubles down for the people, not me. For the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen. But get this, but they did it they had a good reason though. So he doesn't totally throw them under the bus. He just throws, 2/3 of their bodies under the bus. And he says, but they did it to sacrifice unto the Lord Yahweh, thy God Elohim. And the rest we've utterly destroyed. Come on, man. Notice how leaders that have turned from following Yahweh Elohim can and will deflect any disobedience or transgressions onto other people, even their own followers. These leaders that have turned from following Yahweh Elohim can and will justify in their minds and the minds of those following them that they are doing Yahweh Elohim's will. Get this, don't miss this, because the same thing is happening today. These leaders that have turned from following Yahweh Elohim can and will justify in their minds, and in addition to the minds of those following them, that these leaders are doing Yahweh Elohim's will. Let us continue with 1 Samuel chapter 15, and we're going to read verses 16 through 28. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 16 reads, Then Samuel said unto Saul, Stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord Yahweh has said to me this night. And he, Saul, said unto him, Samuel, say on. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 17. And Samuel said, When thou wast little in thine own sight. Man, it don't get no blunter than this. When thou wast little in thy own sight, wast thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord Yahweh anointed thee king over Israel. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 18. And the Lord Yahweh sent thee on a journey. The Lord Yahweh sent thee on a journey. This just wasn't your journey. He sent you on a journey and said, Go and utterly destroy the sinners. So he even puts in there why they were to be destroyed. Go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they be consumed. If something's consumed, there's nothing left. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 19. Wherefore, then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord? Why didn't you obey? But didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord. This is how the Most High sees it. Didst evil in the sight of the Lord. That's how he sees it, is that you did evil. The grace and mercy, though, of Yahweh Elohim is abundant to all. It's undefinable. You can't even understand it. The grace and mercy of Yahweh Elohim is abundant to all, even unto his leaders. Yahweh Elohim sends Samuel to speak truth unto Saul. But as we stated earlier, those leaders that have turned from following Yahweh Elohim can and will justify in their minds and the minds of those following them that they are doing Yahweh Elohim's will. So let us continue with 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 20 through 28. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 20 reads, And Saul said unto Samuel, Yea, yes, unequivocally, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord Yahweh, and have gone the way which the Lord Yahweh sent me. But this is where it loses it. And have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But he said he did all of the things that the Most High told him, but he himself admits, I brought Agag, the king of Amalek. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 21. But the people, Oh, man. Sad. It's just sad. Saul says, but the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed. So he knew they should have been utterly destroyed, but he wasn't responsible. The people did that. But he says, but he took Agag, though, who as well was utterly to be destroyed. It's shameless. But the people, not me, took of the spoiled sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed. But again, only 2/3 of them does he throw under the bus. He gives a good reason. But they were doing it, though, to sacrifice unto the Lord Yahweh, thy God Elohim, in Gilgal. Shameless. Saul, the leader, the guide, doubles down. The guide that's supposed to guide the others' path, the others' course of conduct. He doubles down that he did what Yahweh Elohim told him, taking no responsibility. As we stated earlier, deflecting the wrongdoing onto those following him. But it was the people. It was the people that disobeyed. But they did it for a good reason, a good purpose. Shameless. Let us continue with 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 22 through 28. 1 Samuel 15, verse 22 reads, and Samuel now said, hath the Lord Yahweh as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifice as in obeying the voice of the Lord Yahweh? Samuel poses the question, does the Lord have great delight in burnt offerings or obeying his voice? So he answers the question for him. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken and to listen than the fat of rams. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 23. For rebellion, Samuel, this is still Samuel going on. He's digging in. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord Yahweh, he hath also rejected thee from being king. Consequences, I'm telling you. There are consequences for leaders that do not lead the way that the Most High has structured for them to lead. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord Yahweh, he hath also rejected thee from being king. Please do not miss that Samuel makes it crystal clear that Yahweh Elohim expects us all, but especially his leaders, to be obedient, even above sacrifice. And that rejecting the word of Yahweh Elohim leaves you vulnerable to Yahweh Elohim rejecting you and your service. Let us continue with 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 24 through 28. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 24 reads, and Saul said unto Samuel, so this is Saul's response, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and thy words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 25. Now therefore, this sounds so familiar. Now therefore, I pray thee, pardon my sin and turn again with me, that I may worship the Lord. Ah, man, the trickery started off way back then. Okay, yeah, this not only is this the first time, this is the second time that I've sinned, I've transgressed, but let's just put all of that aside. Now, therefore, I pray thee, just pardon me, pardon my sin, and turn again with me, that I may go back and worship the Lord. Well, you're not worshiping the Lord. You're not worshiping Yahweh. But see, he couldn't fool the man of Yahweh, the man of Elohim. Let us read 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 26. And Samuel said unto Saul, I will not. Man, I love that. I wish all of us could do that. And Samuel said unto Saul, I will not return with thee, for thou hast rejected the word of the Lord Yahweh, and the Lord hath rejected thee from being king over Israel. That's what I'm talking about. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 27. And as Samuel turned about to go away, he, Saul, laid hold upon the skirt of his mantle. It's like, well, wait a minute. Let me rationalize. Let me reason with you. But Samuel was turning away, and it rent. So let us read here. Samuel take full advantage of this. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 28. And Samuel said unto Saul, the Lord Yahweh hath rent the kingdom of Israel from thee this day, and hath given it to a neighbor of thine that is better than thou. The scripture shares vividly what a true disciple, follower, believer of Yahweh Elohim should do when made aware of leaders that fall away from following Yahweh Elohim. As Yahweh Elohim's followers, believers, disciples, we have the same charge and responsibility to hold leaders accountable. To hold leaders accountable. We have that same charge and responsibility. Even when they try and rationalize their deviation from Yahweh Elohim's commandments, we must hold them accountable. Even when they try and place the blame and responsibility on others than themselves, we must hold them accountable. Understand that Yahweh Elohim is merciful. This was not Saul's first offense of not adhering to Yahweh Elohim's commandments. Remember, after his first offense, he still anointed him to be king. Let us comprehend the scripture shared leaders that do not follow after Yahweh Elohim lead the people that follow them astray. Let us understand this, that the scripture shared that the leaders that do not follow after Yahweh Elohim lead the people that follow them astray. So we know where those leaders are leading them now, that don't follow after Yahweh Elohim. This is not the only example. There are several others listed in the scripture. We will not turn to them for sake of time today. But in 1 Kings chapter 14, verses 1 through 20 is a great example of how Yahweh Elohim dealt with King Jeroboam. The scripture also shares about the sins and wickedness of King Baasha in 1 Kings chapter 15 and 2 Chronicles chapter 16. And Pashhur, the chief governor during the time of Jeremiah, in Jeremiah chapters 20 and 21. I encourage you all to read these scriptural illustrations. May we all be discerning and not be deceived, following after the false leaders of this secular world. Continuously praying that Yahweh Elohim allow his followers, his believers, his disciples to hold all leaders accountable to his word. Who are our leaders and where are they leading us? I would like to invite you to continue to fellowship and worship the Sabbath with the Ecclesia next Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition, please join the Ecclesia every Wednesday evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for prayer. The link for both is provided on his servant's website. Something to think about. If you're seeking a blessing, be a blessing. If this message is something to think about, has been a blessing, assist us with your time, talents, and finances, and continue to grow and move from just knowing to truly understanding the word of the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. Peace and blessings.
His servant encourages you and prays that you will continue with him on the journey of growing and moving from just knowing to understanding the word of the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. To support you on your journey, his servant offers the following resources. His servant email address. Please feel free to reach out to his servant at any time with any questions, concerns, suggestions, and/or comments. His servant website and his servant YouTube channel. You are encouraged to subscribe to be alerted of new content. In addition, his servant recommends reading or listening to the beginning of Scriptural Truth, Volume 1. It affords a strong beginning foundation in not just knowing, but understanding the Scripture.